This is Nigeria. Nigeria is a country which is located on the western coast of Africa. With approximately 36 billion barrels of confirmed oil reserves, Nigeria is currently the 10th biggest crude oil exporter. While the discovery of oil made countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and even Qatar rich, on the other side, the discovery of oil in Nigeria has caused millions of people there to lose hope for the future and caused immeasurable suffering to its citizens. But how did this happen? In this video, we will discuss how the Nigerian government's choice to give one foreign business control of Nigeria's priceless natural resources has made the nation poorer due to carelessness, corruption, and the satisfaction of the Nigerian people. Is this a story of how one company may rule a whole country, contaminating a nation's water supply with cancer-causing agents, damaging the environment and millions of people's way of life? A company that has complete control over its government and controls the military, using it to suppress people. This is the tale of how Nigeria was taken by a company named Shell Darcy. So how did one business manage to rule over the whole country? You need to take a few steps. The initial and most obvious step when taking over a foreign nation is finding countries which are rich in resources, in our case oil. The problem with that is that most countries are protective of their oil reserves, because they know just how valuable it is. That's why you need to find countries which are oil-rich and are also poor. By doing this, even if they were aware of the value of their oil, they would lack the infrastructure and technical know-how required to extract it. But on top of being poor, we also need one more ingredient, one more qualification for a country to have, for us to want to take advantage of them. Corruption. The government can be manipulated by corporations if the nation is corrupt. Although force can be used to achieve this, it's much simpler and more effective to secure influence over a country using money. In this approach, everyone benefits and nobody notices. Which nation so meets this requirement? Where could Shell locate a country with undiscovered oil deposits and a government and military that were open to bribery? And they found a country called Nigeria. So Shell wasted no time, packed their bags, and moved to Nigeria. Shell started business in Nigeria in 1937 as Shell Darcy. The British government then gave Shell the exclusive right to explore for all minerals and oil throughout the entire area in 1938. This means Shell is now in charge exclusively of all minerals and petroleum found in Nigeria. Shell started digging into people's communities, farms, and ancestral lands using that priceless black gold. After 19 years in 1956, Shell Nigeria discovered the first commercial oil field at Oloibiri in the Niger Delta and started oil exports in 1958. Prior to the discovery of oil, Nigeria, like many other African countries, strongly relied on agricultural exports to other countries to support its economy. The actions of Shell would alter Nigeria for all time. This business has a significant impact on Nigeria's political environment, as well as its economy. Since several decades, Shell has been using Nigeria's oil deposits without much concern for the harm to the environment. Their water supplies have been contaminated by oil spills and years of garbage disposal. With each sip, people are compelled to consume particles that cause cancer. Additionally, farming and fishing have become impossible. Many males are no longer able to take care of their families. Even bad, officials in Nigeria are now totally reliant on Shell. Shell maintained control over Nigeria's major oil export, as well as the infrastructure for oil extraction. So, how did they achieve that? When Shell came to Nigeria, they first promised the Nigerian government that if they gave us permission to build the infrastructure for extracting oil, we would develop your nation, create thousands of jobs, and bring in tons of international investment. Being a developing nation in need of foreign direct investment, it initially appears to be a fantastic deal for the Nigerian government. They urge foreign corporations to improve Nigeria's infrastructure, since doing so will increase investment, create more employment, increase prosperity, increase tax revenue, and generally advance the nation. Therefore, it seems like a win-win situation to have this large international corporation offering to create better extraction techniques for your major export. However, like every other thing, there was a cost associated with this, because Shell was the ones who would actually own and run the infrastructure, even though it would all be on Nigerian soil. As a result, Nigeria would eventually become completely reliant on Shell to operate approximately 10 oil wells in the country. Since oil accounts for 95% of Nigeria's exports, this accounts for 40% of the country's economy. Additionally, Shell now has control over nearly half of Nigeria's total cash flow, because they were in charge of the flow of oil through the country. As time passed, Shell became so powerful in Nigeria that they could call upon the entire military. Yes, a private multinational corporation controlled the entire military of a nation. The Shell Petroleum Development Company is the largest fossil fuel company in Nigeria. It operates over 6,000 kilometers. That is 3,700 miles of pipelines and floor lines, 87 floor stations, 8 natural gas plants, and more than 1,000 producing wells. It is an operator of the joint venture, which is composed of Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, 55%, Shell, 30%, Total Energies, 10%, and Eni, 5%. It comes from more than 80 fields and accounts for more than 21% of Nigeria's total petroleum production. Therefore, the question is whether Nigeria can be freed from Shell's control. Shell also controls the oil distribution network. Therefore, even if Nigeria were to miraculously take control of the extraction process, they would still require Shell to export the product outside of the country. In addition, not only does this oil money support Nigeria's economy, but it also accounts for over 65% of the revenue generated by the Nigerian government. If Shell stopped extracting oil, this would plunge the economy into a deep recession and render the government powerless. But the impacts of Shell couldn't have been all evil, could it? Of course not. Shell has officially disclosed that the company employs 11,700 people, 97% of whom are Nigerian. Shell paid the Nigerian government $3.2 billion in corporate taxes and royalties in 2020. In return, Shell got access to the OPL 245 oil fields, which increased Shell's total oil reserves by a third. $3 billion that Nigeria received was then distributed to a number of middlemen. $466 million of that was given to the Nigerian president and his subordinates instead of being spent on the nation later. Additionally, Shell awarded contracts worth $0.8 billion to Nigerian businesses. They finally supported 19 healthcare projects and distributed 2,391 university grants to local communities after so many court cases tarnished the company's reputation. Shell does what is called gas flaring, which is highly illegal as it increases air pollution. Shell claims that when oil is brought to the surface of the earth, gas is frequently produced as well. In a process known as gas flaring, this gas is burned off because it is considered an undesirable byproduct. Local community members have argued that the gas flaring activities contribute to environmental and health issues because they are located close to many subsistence farm lands. Evidently, the million tons of carbon dioxide and methane that are released annually into the atmosphere as a result of gas flaring have polluted the air in this region. Individuals from villages surrounding oil production facilities occasionally drill holes into Shell oil pipelines for the purposes of capturing oil and transporting it illegally out of Nigeria for monetary gain. This process, known as oil bunkering, is estimated to cost Nigeria as much as 400,000 barrels of crude oil per day. Typically, when the oil theft operation is finished, the pipeline is left open, which results in an oil spill. In 1970, there was an oil spill from a Shell pipeline caused primarily by corrosion and operational failure, resulting in over 250 barrels of oil spilled. The resulting effects included the pollution of the surrounding air, water, and soil, as well as the loss of the surrounding ecological and aquatic species. Health problems in the surrounding areas were also cited as an impact of the oil spill. In 1978, another spill from a Shell pipeline due to corrosion and operational failure was reported to have leaked 580,000 barrels of oil. It resulted in mass protest that led to the Shell suspending its activities in the Oland. But the damage had already been done. Some of the protesters' leaders were arrested when the Nigerian government carried out a raid on these villages. Shell now had a formula for success. Whenever there was a protest, the Nigerian military would come in to save the day. In April 1993, the military injured 11 people protesting against a new oil pipeline. In 2008, 2 oil spills occurred in the Bodo community. The oil spill was investigated by a team of investigators. Shell accepted responsibility after learning that the oil spills were caused by pipeline operational failures. Shell Oil was responsible for 627 barrels of oil spilled between 1998 and 2009, or approximately 41,000 barrels annually. In conclusion, even though Shell Corporation brought all of the money to Nigeria, it ended up in the pockets of corrupt politicians, army generals, and military heads of states. It also used those same people to oppress Nigerian communities. For the Nigerian people, Shell has been nothing more than an extension of the colonial rule of impunity, corruption, and contentment. If there was ever a Nigerian dream, I believe it was stolen by Shell when it left that first pipeline. Thanks for watching this video now. See you next time.